Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to today's Sufi teachings. This Sufi teaching series we call Community Connection occurs on the first Sunday of every month at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. It is organized and underwritten by Sufi Center Minnesota with the intention of making the Sufi teachings of peace, love, mercy, justice, freedom, and beauty available to people everywhere. We acknowledge that the land Sufi Center is located on is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Dakota and Mdewakanton tribes. Sufi Center Minnesota recognizes and respects the enduring relationship that exists between many indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands. We're excited and grateful to have Maryam Thea Elijah with us today. Thea Elijah has been gratefully on the Sufi path for more than 20 years. She's also an acupuncturist and herbalist, hence her ongoing delight in exploring the intersection of spiritual practice and the principles of healing. She lives in Southern Vermont, and her home is a zawiyah for the last 3 days of every month. And if you would like to attend, please reach out to her. And if I might relay an anecdote, I was talking with Maryam the other day, and she told me a story about her early days of walking as a beloved of Sidi Muhammad al-Jamal. She was attending one of Sidi's teachings, and she approached him and said something to the effect of, "Sidi, the teachings seem very serious, which is good, but I'm wondering if there's room for fun." She says that Sidi looked at her and said, "Beloved Maryam, I want you to have the real fun." And that has been a hallmark of her teaching. And we at Sufi Center Minnesota are in complete alignment with her and with Sidi in our advocacy for the real fun. Her teaching today is The Heart Has Two Doors. Maryam, welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for that welcome. This teaching, The Heart Has Two Doors, began with my writing from Reality of Gnosis, a chapter called Imaginal Unveiling and Spiritual Unveiling. And when I wrote it the first time, it made very little sense to me, but something about it really grabbed me. And so I wrote it a few more times, and then some understandings began to open. I ran it past Amina al-Jamal and Aisha Cotton just to find out if I was out of my mind. And they agreed that I am, but that what I was getting was in alignment. So I would like to actually begin by going ahead and reading that chapter, Imaginal Unveiling and Spiritual Unveiling, from page 117 in Reality of Gnosis. If it doesn't make a whit of sense to you, don't worry about it. Just let the transmission move through you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Imaginal Unveiling and Spiritual Unveiling. Al-Khashf al-Khayali wal-Khashf al-Ruhani. Know, O follower, that you will continue to ascend by imaginal and spiritual unveiling in relation to your physical and spiritual matters, and the excellence of your physical and spiritual faculties will continue to be revealed to you until you are completely and firmly established in reality. Then you will see the perfection of all your affairs and arrive at the essence of the real by witnessing every physical and spiritual matter of the truth. Know that spiritual matters are vast because of the expansiveness of spiritual unveiling by the rule of the spirit of the divine revelations within it. It is that divine spirit that overflows his immortality upon matters, and that is why they are called spiritual matters, since they are the loci of the divine manifestation of the spirit. On the other hand, physical matters are limited by the degree of imaginal unveiling. This means that imaginal unveiling comes from the connection to the body, which demands limitation by its very nature. When the imaginal faculty becomes unattached to its physical connection and is free from the limitations of veiling, it returns to the divine presence. As it returns to the divine presence, it returns to what is most expansive because it is free from all limitation and restriction. This is because all the physical levels are restricted intermediate substations in accordance with the unveiling of imaginal bodies. Even the bodies of the garden and the fire are constricted intermediate substations. However, know that when he manifests himself through spiritual and physical affairs, he does so in accordance with his wisdom. Know that the spirit of the archangel Jibril, alayhi wassalam, appeared in the sensory during imaginal unveiling with 600 wings. On the other hand, he appeared as a sensory physical human being of 60 arms length. This means that his appearance in the physical sensory world was restricted. When Jibril, alayhi wassalam, appeared in the sensory during imaginal unveiling, he had 600 wings because of the vastness of the spiritual world. He reveals himself as he is in himself in the state he knows, because the presence of the self is the presence of the essence. The presence of the essence encompasses itself and cannot be restricted even by its spiritual expanse or be specified by physical restriction. Therefore, the angelic spirit in itself does not appear as 3 arms length or with 600 wings spread across the horizon. In relation to Allah, the archangel is a disengaged meaning and is none other than the greatest name, which inspires him to know his spirit and his meaning. But furthermore, it is he who is the one who resurrects his existence as an archangel. O my follower, disengage yourself and turn toward the unveiling of the imaginal concerning all the affairs of the lower sensory world, until unveiling reveals their realities with their stations, forms, and all their multiplicities. Then you will ascend to the necessary presence that demands their existence. Through that, you will witness the limitation of their existence and know the purpose of their limitation and existence. Then you will know the manifest through the affairs, regardless of the multiplicity of ranks and forms. You will also know the hidden within these affairs, regardless of the multiplicity of appearances and existence. If this becomes clear to you, you will be able to travel the way to the real with polite manners, in every affair in accordance with its sensory appearance and by inspiration in the station in which Allah puts you. Know, my follower, that in spite of the restriction of the body, its limitation is what you need for walking and traveling the way to the truth. Understand, and you will become aware that these bodies are the embodiments of disengaged meanings that manifest through them. Look and consider the unique singled out name. When he manifested it as a body with praiseworthy appearance, he simulated it with the archangel manifesting an image of 3 arms length. See how the restricted body did not prevent the complete manifestation of the godly expansion within it. O follower of Allah, when you have completed this station of imaginal unveiling and sensory meanings have been revealed to you, then the one who inspires your existence will disengage you from your lower existence and establish you by him. Only then will you ascend to spiritual unveiling and to spiritual affairs. This is given to you as an honor and a gift from Allah. This will be a new chapter in your life, in which Allah, through revelation, reveals your affinity to the Spirit, if you witness the manifestation of the wise Spirit within your own soul. When this is completed in you, you will witness that abundance in your own existence. By him, you will be drawn to the vastness of the world of power, which allows you to dwell in the desired presence, O one who desires, in which you will witness the name of Allah, the Divine Self. When you master witnessing this sight and become qualified for its effects, your spirituality will become evident, and by this, you will be able to understand spiritual affairs within the blink of an eye, in comparison with physical perceptions, which is under the rule of time. This is because spiritual matters are not governed by time, but time is under the jurisdiction of the Spirit. When you become a true spirit, after having become complete through imaginal and spiritual unveiling, you will perceive the appearance of angels in accordance with the expansion that the spiritual unveiling decrees. Then you will know and be actualized by the reality of the angels. You will know the images and manifestations of the angels, and you will understand the meanings of the simulated imaginal forms. When the manifest verification occurs to you, when the experience of witnessing becomes dominant in you, and when the faculties of your imagination and your spirituality manifest to you from yourself and your spirit, then know that you now completely know the reality of yourself and have gnosis of the essence of your existence. What is meant here is that if you know the essence of the presence of yourself, then you truly know your Lord by all the aspects of his manifestations in all the horizons of spiritual and physical affairs and in all the diverse presences of the essence, qualities, actions, and rulings. After this, you are no longer constricted by the microcosm, which is like a small mirror that allows you to see the heavens, but in accordance with its small size and restrictions, not in accordance with the vastness of the expanse of heavens. If you free yourself from this constriction, you will arrive at the highest garden, which is the most exalted vastness that will allow you to see yourself in yourself. So understand. So the heart has two doors. Let's start with the door to the dunya. Look around you and see the dense bodies of the walls, of the furniture, of your own body, and maybe touch with your hands. Give it a try to feel the realness of the density of things and of your own body. This is an invitation to be in your heart, looking out the door at the dunya through your five senses. Because most of the time we don't do that. We are not in our hearts looking out at the dunya. Most of the time, we have marched right out through that door into the dunya, where we completely get entangled and forget how to find the door that leads back into the heart. Maybe that's not true of you. I notice it of myself often. The doorway out of the dunya back into our heart is the same doorway, the doorway of the five senses. We can leave our heart and go out into the dunya through the five senses, and we can also use the five senses as a doorway back into the heart. Let me explain this further, and I think it will start to feel familiar. Often, when we have left our heart through the doorway that leads to the dunya, we get very entangled with the dunya. That's why it's so hard to find our way back to the heart. At that point, when we are lost and entangled with the dunya, we are not really in touch with Allah's creation. We are only in touch with our own creation, our own thoughts and feelings about what we see and hear and feel and smell and taste in the dunya. We get lost in our own mental and emotional creation. So step one for returning to the heart is stepping out of the dust storm of your own personally concocted reality and actually being right here with the creation. Take some time to look away from this computer and look around at Mok. Look at the things around you and see them, touch them with your true physical eyes and your true physical hands, not just your ideas or feelings about them. Often we live in a conceptual reality, barely embodied. This disembodied conceptual way of living does not bring us closer to Allah. Or we may live in a reality made up of our own most personally compelling feelings about what is happening to us and around us. And this does not bring us closer to Allah either. It mires us in the dunya. Returning to the unadorned simplicity of the five senses is what brings us back to that door. So be with the walls of your house. be with each piece of furniture. Touch your clothing. Touch your own elbow. Really get to know it. Not your ideas about it, the elbow itself, its density, its qualities. Notice each thing, its color, its shape, not what it means to you or whether you like it. Just be with it as a physical sensory experience. This is not easy, actually, as you may be discovering. It's easiest when you are sitting in a class doing an exercise. It's not as easy to stay with the simplicity of your direct sensory relationship with the creation as you live your daily life. A whole lot of Zen goes into just being with things as they are, rather than being with things as packages of personal meaning. With our minds, we wrap meanings onto things like shrink wrap or cellophane. Lots of cars means I'm rich. Lots of diplomas means I'm smart. Lots of chocolate means I will feel no pain. It represents a significant portion of spiritual journey, just to engage in a simple and clean way with the sensory world where things are what they are. A bird is a bird. The sun is the sun. A computer is a computer. See if you can take a moment to set your heart's intention to look around and say a simple sensory hello with no added meaning to what your senses recognize around you right now as a spiritual practice. Grasping and aversion, or liking and disliking, is the simplest complication of our relationship with sensory reality. Caught in grasping and aversion, our relationship with creation becomes a catalog of likes and dislikes. I love cupcakes. I hate parking tickets. Everything is experienced as a separate dense body related to in terms of its effect on our own separate dense body. It's either a cupcake, or generally in the cupcake category, or it's a parking ticket, or generally in the parking ticket category. This is enough to pull us out of simply being with Allah's creation through our unadorned senses into the first level of enmeshment with the dunya. But it rarely stays as simple as that, except in very young children. Next, we move from simple grasping and aversion to creating complex interpretations. In Sufi language, we make pictures. We devise and convolute levels of personal meaning until a cupcake is no longer a cupcake. It's a simultaneous affirmation of our right to some sweetness in life and a symbol of our self-loathing for not having more impulse control. A parking ticket is no longer just a parking ticket. It's a sign that God is punishing us for eating that cupcake. So most healing and a lot of spiritual practice, from Sufism to psychotherapy to Zen, is about peeling back and cleaning out all the meanings that we cook up and shrink wrap onto chunks of dunya. Our ability to create these convoluted, complicated enmeshments of personal meaning that keep us trapped in the dunya is an amazing gift from Allah. The animals do not have this ability. It is incredibly creative and powerful. It is called imagination. We will be talking a lot about the reality of imagination. We're going to be talking about the healthy, holy, and vitally necessary place of imagination on our path to know Allah. But first, we need to stop misusing imagination. So I am belaboring the point. Can you think of examples in your life where there were people, events, or even just objects that you cooked up meanings and interpretations and then shrink wrapped them so tight onto those people, events, or objects that there's no way you could see those people, events, or objects as themselves in the most simple, direct, sensory way? Take a moment to think of a few examples from your past. Take a moment to think of a few examples from right now. Can you catch yourself in the act of shrink wrapping your meanings onto people, events, and things? Can you think of examples from your past when someone else seemed lost in a concocted meaning about you? Can you think of examples when you were lost in a concocted meaning about someone else? It's very helpful to consider, where am I concocting meaning around someone or something? Can I come back to my five senses and just be with what is? This misuse of imagination to make pictures keeps us caught and makes it difficult or impossible to receive the tajalli, the revelations to which humankind is privy through the blessing of our healthy and holy imaginal capacity. When Siddhi speaks of imagination, he is not referring to the misuse of imagination that creates pictures. We want to clear the pictures to get to the point where when we see a broken toaster oven, we just see a broken toaster oven, not our mental and emotional concoctions about the broken toaster oven. Or when we see our father, we see our father, not our mental and emotional concoctions around our father. Getting to that point is a lot of fuss and bother, but it's worth it because then the deeper journey can begin. After we have divested of our own concocted meanings, or in the places where we have divested of our own concocted meanings, because this kind of cleaning is a lifetime discipline, we stand at the threshold of the journey to the world of Allah's meanings. For this, we need access to the world of imagination. Having explained what imagination isn't, namely concoction, I'd like to explain what imagination is, as Siddhi is using the term, and a little bit about how it functions as a pathway of gnosis. Then we can get practical together about how we take our first steps on that path. So let's talk about those two doors of the heart. One, as we've explored, is the sensory door that lets us know about cupcakes and parking tickets. The other door is the door to the real, the world of the essence. What is called the barzakh is the intermediary realm that touches both the world of divine meanings and the world of the sensory. Here we find the khayal, the world of imagination. The world of imagination is also a sensory world, but it is a subtle, not a dense sensory world. From Reality of Imagination, page 55, Allah created the human body to be the proprietor of the human spirit. He gave the body natural organs such as eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, etc. With these natural organs, Allah planted faculties, which he named seeing, hearing, etc. He created two aspects to these faculties: a sensory aspect which is directed towards the world of witnessing, and an aspect which is directed toward the imaginal world. In Reality of Imagination, page 14, Siddhi explains that the reality of being has three ontological levels. One, the level of meanings disengaged from substrata that can only be perceived directly by the akal, the pure intellect. Two, the level of dense things that can be perceived by the senses. Three, the level of imaginal things, which is an intermediary level between the world of meaning and the world of sensory things. They are meanings that assume shape in sensory form. I'm going to say that last sentence again. They are meanings that assume shape in sensory form. An example of meanings that assume shape in sensory form would be, for instance, dreams. If you have a dream about an enormous broken toaster oven, you can be fairly certain that whatever that dream's meaning, it's not really about an enormous broken toaster oven. It's about something that is using the form of an enormous broken toaster oven to convey a meaning to you, a meaning too subtle to grasp without bringing it into a recognizable sensory form as an intermediary. Metaphor is an example of using a sensory image in order to carry a subtle meaning. We write a poem to create imagery that will convey to the reader a meaning that exists from beyond the poem. The poem's metaphorical imagery was like a cup that carries the meaning in subtle sensory form. So see, I just did it. I used the metaphor of a cup, which is a familiar sensory object from Molk that we all know, and referenced the experience of a cup carrying to us something that we could not conveniently hold to receive it in any other way. By borrowing this familiar experience from the sensory world, now in the world of imagination, the sensory experience is repurposed to allow the conveyance of meaning. Music and art are obvious examples of the use of form, color, and sound to convey meanings that are in no way inevitable or eternally attached to those forms. When the form vanishes, the meaning remains. Take, for instance, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. It's a transient thing, played on a bunch of objects by a bunch of human meat chunks, and yet somehow something immortal and essential is alluded to, such that down here in Molk, even after the music is over, the message of the meaning remains in the hearts of the listeners. Without the imaginal faculty, you could not understand common phrases like, "You can't eat the apple in one bite." You would look at great art and just say, "What's that?" You would take everything literally. Imagine what that would be like. Imagine how little you would understand of subtle matters if all that you could do with your senses was see and hear and smell and taste and touch the world of denseness. Imagine how hard it would be to convey to you subtle meanings that concreteness and literalness can never convey. Give thanks for your imaginal capacity, for giving you the ability to turn all that you have become familiar with in sensory reality into wings and cups and boats or whatever else is needed to grasp an abstract meaning and convey it to the lips of your spirit like a fruit that you can taste. So we are still discussing the first door, the door to the dunya, the sensory door. But we are also saying that when we come into our heart through that door, when we turn our sensory witnessing away from the dunya, but we still retain our sensory faculties, these sensory faculties become a means by which we can receive tajalli. Allah can send us dreams, visions, images, the poetry of the Quran, visits from angels, and so much more that we are only able to know through our ability to imagine, our ability to merge transient sensory images with abstract eternal meanings. So let's take a moment to settle right here on the threshold of the sensory doorway, aware now that we can turn in two different directions. You can try it right now. You can look out the door and see me here outside in the dunya. or you can turn and look inside your heart at the image of me. That is an imaginal creation inside of you, carrying the subtle meanings that are conveyed to your heart by that image. And everybody's imaginal image of me is slightly different, maybe more than slightly. The subtle meanings that each person connects with through that imaginal image of me are different. Of course, neither that image of me inside of you, nor the subtle meanings that you take from that image of me is me. In your heart, I have become a metaphor. This is possible because the heart has another door besides the door to the dunya. The heart also has a doorway to the divine. What moves through that doorway is pure meaning. And long before we are of a station to access pure meaning directly, we are able to welcome meanings that come into our heart through that doorway of the divine, cloaked in images, visions, and metaphors. And this is encouraged. On page 39 and page 41 of Reality of Imagination, Sidi uses the example of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, telling us that ihsan, excellence, is to worship Allah as if you see him. Sidi explains that to worship as if you see him is an example of imagination. We are not told Allah is unimaginable, so don't even try. We are told to stretch, to open, to do our best to imagine. And as we turn toward that second door, the doorway to Allah and the world of meaning, our imagination is like a lightly woven sensory tapestry into which Allah can infuse his presence. It gets even wilder than this. Sidi gives us this footnote on page 117 of Reality of Gnosis. He says, Al-Khayal is an imaginal presence that is manifest in three different places. In the world where existence is identical to imagination. In the intermediate world between spirits and bodies. And in the human being's faculty of imagination. For me, this was a total mind blow because I can easily accept that imagination is this otherworldly realm between the spirit and the body, and also an aspect of human consciousness. But the first aspect of imaginal presence that Sidi mentions here is in the world where existence is identical to imagination. We need to talk about that. Reality of Imagination, page 23. Everything other than the essence of the real is intermediate imagination and vanishing shadow. Sidi says this in several places, emphasizing that from the divine perspective, even mulk is a dream, a metaphor. The mountains and trees and rivers are surah and ayat. They are the imaginal outpouring of the divine. So think of the most transcendent, most lofty art that you have ever experienced. And remember how it opened you through sensory forms into a sense of meaning beyond the form. A level of meaning that stretched your soul to be able to grasp and apprehend it. Perhaps you felt shaken. Perhaps you were left with a sense that you could only just touch the meaning of this great work of art that was conveyed to you. You could barely taste it because of how immense and transcendent that meaning was. That is what a great human artist is capable of doing with the power of imagination. Now consider the creation, which is God's work of art. We can be with the creation in a purely sensory way. A tree is a tree, a mountain is a mountain. Or we can be with the trees and the mountains as surah and ayat, as images and forms that refer to meanings from beyond the creation, knowable only through the imaginative faculty, not the literal mind, and not the senses alone. I think this is a familiar experience for many people out in nature, leaving our phone behind. First, we come out of our mental, conceptual, disembodied state, then out of our emotional, ongoing swirl, and start to become present in our simple senses with the direct, simple, mulk, sensory reality of the wind in the trees, the sound of the river, the play of shadows and light, the mix of fragrances and temperatures in the air around us. As we come out of concoction and convolution, we become present to the creation as it is. The reality of God's creation is at first a sensory experience within density, but then it lifts us into the heart as it whispers to us of meanings sensed. Somehow the tree is more than just a tree, and the river is more than just a river. It's part of something, an emanation of something that we can feel. Clearly, this faculty of sensing the meaning of the tree and being spoken to wordlessly by the river is very, very different from concocting meanings from our nafs. For example, this tree reminds me of my childhood because we had a tree house and I really loved it. And the river reminds me of heartbreak because I once had a sailboat, but I don't have one anymore. These are personal meanings that we are attaching to the tree and the river with our thoughts and emotions. Not only are they almost certainly going to be completely different than the meanings that Allah al-Musawwir is generously intending to convey to our hearts as tajalliyat, but can you see how our cumbersome convolutions get in the way? No wonder we are asked to clean our pictures. No wonder we are taught not to stop with the outside picture. We listen. We let the river speak. We let the forest speak. We don't impose meaning on it. Sidi used to tell me very often, Maryam, do not stop with the outside picture, Maryam, whenever I tried to get his perspective on something that was going on in my life. I'm only just starting to get a practical sense of what he meant, a sense of how to open to the world of Allah's meaning as it moves through the outside picture events of our lives. It begins with orienting towards all of it as a dream or a metaphor, Allah's dream, Allah's metaphor, and then refraining from immediately making shit up about it. Just keeping the door open and listening from beyond the boundaries of the self. To listen from beyond the boundaries of the self is a softening of our existential vehemence to the point where we no longer feel like the star of the movie of our life. Check that out right now. Most of us walk around feeling like the main character in the story, and we see everything from the main character's point of view. This is very understandable. At first, it's the only point of view we've got, but it is a state of separation. How do we get out of that state of separation? Not through equally vehemently denying our self-importance. I'm not here, I don't exist, I don't matter. It's much more gentle than that. and very similar to what we experience in nature, when the trees and the river and the mountains all feel like dream forms in which we are part of the same dream. That's the feeling of no separation. Or here's another metaphor. It's the metaphor of a jigsaw puzzle that comes in a box with all the pieces all jumbled together. We are the puzzle pieces, and we do not know the image that the puzzle as a whole conveys. Now, an individual puzzle piece has two aspects: shape and color. When we identify primarily with our cutout shape, we are identifying with our separateness, our individual form. This is me, right? We're surrounded by other shapes that we either click in with or we don't click based on our shape. But there's more to an individual puzzle piece than its shape. There's also the qualities that it carries, the colors that are manifest on the puzzle piece that will only make sense as part of a bigger picture. The fact that your puzzle piece is half a white blob and half a red blob doesn't make any sense in your individual life. It only makes sense within a pattern greater than yourself, in which your qualities contribute to a larger whole. In the bigger picture, it may be that the red blob is part of the scarf around Snoopy's neck, and the white blob is part of his face. In this sense, we are each part of a much larger Snoopy than any one of us will ever be able to know or contain on an individual basis. Until we stop identifying with ourselves primarily as individual puzzle pieces and start feeling how we fit into a much larger image. There are meanings that do not fit within the scale of the individual human frame. Imagine an aleph written so large that you cannot see all of it with your tiny human eyes, let alone comprehend that this aleph is the beginning of the divine name. This is one of the primary indicators of a true revelation of conveyed meaning rather than personal concocted meaning. This quality of not fitting into graspable sense in human terms. Reality of Imagination, page 58. Reflection seeks to detect imagination, i.e., to define it in one particular fixed thought. But according to the Gnostics, everything that becomes fixed in theoretical reflection about expanding realities is wrong. Or some of us remember Sidi leaning forward after we expounded to him our most cherished spiritual theories to say, if it makes sense, it's not true. Nevertheless, there is a kind of sense that it does make, a felt sense, a knowing, a meaning that is connected to all meaning, even though we are only able to grasp part of it. We can grasp more of it together. Like right here in the Zoom call, where we appear to exist as a gathering of separate rectangles. And yet, if we can see ourselves and each other in our rectangles as part of a larger puzzle that forms a greater image, thus Allah uses our imagination, our sensory apparatus detached from literalness, for a revelation of Him. Once we realize that this entire Zoom call is a metaphorical image, and we are open to listening across the artificial boundaries of the self, we become capable as a community of receiving the tajalli of meanings too great for any one of us to bear alone. And as if this were not enough, then we go beyond that. Remember that beyond imaginal unveiling is spiritual unveiling. The world of imagination is vast and full of extraordinary wonders because it is a bridge between the subtle and the sensory. It is even more fascinating and compelling than the dunya. We can get lost in the world of imagination, forgetting that its only value is what it can allow us to know of Allah through intermediate, subtle, sensory forms. Reality of Gnosis, page 119, Sidi says, O follower of Allah, when you have completed this station of imaginal unveiling and sensory meanings have been revealed to you, then the one who inspires you existence will disengage you from your lower existence and establish you by him. Only then will you ascend to spiritual unveiling and spiritual affairs. This will be a new chapter in your life. This is the place where we stand at the heart's doorway to the divine essence. And there is no longer any need for metaphor and imagery. We just receive the tajalli as direct knowing. So as we move from this teaching into our community dhikr, make dhikr as if you see him, and be equally ready to receive tajalli into your image of God, or to be swept out beyond all images into the direct knowledge of the real. Amen. That took less time than I thought.
You want to take some questions or reflections?
I would love to take a few moments before questions and reflections, just to be in remembrance for a little bit. Can we do that?
Absolutely.
Allah, 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 Bismillah. Okay.
So if anyone would like to reflect or ask a question, raise your hand and we'll call on you.
Looks like Salima has a hand raised.
I couldn't find the other hand.
Oh, that's okay, Selena, go
So I
ahead.
used my real one. There was a sentence you talked about, having one sentence that can shoot you into somewhere else. It was this sentence about as a community. It was just a sentence like we each hold a piece, and if you could even just say that sentence again, I would be happy.
I think what it might be when I was saying that there is a felt sense, a meaning that's connected to all meaning, even though we're only able to grasp part of it. We are able to grasp more of it together. I don't know. I have my notes, and I'm happy to send them to Abdullah Pat, who can make them available to anybody who wants them.
That would be wonderful. And I will listen again, but that was the essence. We each only hold. But together, yeah.
Yes. How could you
Gotcha.
separate the river from the mountain, from the sky, from the tree? How could we separate Maryam from Salima, from Salam, from Rahim? This is one spiritual ecosystem. Hey, Rahma.
Go ahead, Rahma.
Hi, thank you. So the I've worked with like archetypes like the Joker or the sun, or I may have to say astaghfirullah, a prophet or something like that. There's a universal understanding. I don't know if it's universal, but I think that it's universal. It's what makes it an archetype. That there is a felt sense, and when it's perceived with the eyes of the heart, that there's different meaning there. It is seen perhaps as an ayah, a sign of a universal meaning that humanity may need to know more about when we sort of come into it and we come into its presence. Is that sort of where is that in the places that you were talking about? I'm curious.
Suddenly I can't see you.
Hmm?
So I hear you, but I guess I'm going to be, raise your hand again, would you? So that I can see you.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you very much. It's just nice to be able to see you while speaking to you. Yes, in the imaginal realm, there are so many things. There's everybody and their shamanic cousin. There's archetypes. There's the things that you see on LSD. There's hallucinations from fevers. There's things that have the potentiality to be a vehicle for meaning that brings us closer to Allah, a vehicle for meaning that brings us neither closer nor further away, but just sends us running in circles after archetypes for our whole life, or that brings us deeper actually into sensation. It's definitely not all equal in the world of imagination. Everything is like what's there is incalculable. So it's most important to be considering where there are forms carrying meanings or sensory subtle signifiers that carry meaning. Is this bringing us closer to Allah? Is this boat sailing in the direction we want to go? Or is it bringing us in circles or bringing us down? Now, this cannot be answered once and for all. The archetypes can, for someone, be like the qualities that become a road to an understanding of an aspect of the essence. While for somebody else, it just becomes a boondoggle, like that's all they do is get their PhD on the archetypes and kind of stay on that level for the rest of their life. So it's not inherent in the archetypes. It's inherent in how we are relating to the poles established by the two doors of the heart.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahma. Maryam, you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, please?
Keep your hand up so I can see you.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum. This is well timed. I've been wondering about something I saw in the imaginal realm lately, and this gives a lot of understanding, because I had been kind of swimming around like, what was this image that I saw during, I gave a healing and I saw an image of angel wings. And so you're saying that this is a relation, we can go to, Allah has a deeper meaning that we can access. I was getting caught up in the other stuff. Like I was trying to make sense of it all. And then I'm trying to figure out how to open that door to what Allah was trying to tell me.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I'm what do we need to do?
Sorry?
Let's see here. Maryam, why don't you go ahead and mute yourself while we got two Maryams. Maryam Kavira, why don't you go ahead and mute yourself, and then Maryam can speak to it. We might be getting some feedback.
Alhamdulillah.
Testing. Seems okay. Yeah. So I'm hearing a number of things. One is that an image appeared to you. I heard a little bit about wings, angel wings. And one possibility that we could, I'm not recommending this, is we could say, oh, image of angel wings. Look it up in the symbol book. What does angel wings symbolize? What does it mean? Or we could say, okay, we could concoct something out of our mind to figure it out and essentially put our meaning on it. When what is happening here requires a kind of softness, the same softness that we use to listen to the river or the wind in the trees. Something is being whispered to you through this form. And certainly there is a relationship of resonance between the conveyance and what is conveyed. It is not random what the image is. It has a relationship of resonance with what is conveyed, but that is not a fixed or exact relationship. So we need to allow the image to tickle us, to get our attention and open us to Allah. Oh Allah, what is being brought here? And to listen softly rather than think. So you might bring it into the dhikr that we're going to be doing. Just bringing it there to kind of soften and open and become even more permeable to light or meaning, until the image is irrelevant and you're just going, oh.
Did you want to say anything else, Maryam Kabira?
No, I heard that.
MashaAllah.
Thank you. We have one question in the chat. This might be our final question for today. It comes from Brother Muhammad Walid, and he asks, what is the relationship between the world of imagination and the dream world, please?
The world of imagination is vast, and includes many things. And the world of dreams is part of it. That may be a more simple answer than you wanted, but it's a subcategory of the world of imagination. I'm not sure if there's, I would need something more specific. Yeah. Okay, great, good.
Okay. So, Maryam, any final thoughts or that you want to leave us with before we end the teaching today?
As we move into Dhikr as community. Make dhikr as if you see him. Make dhikr as if you are a puzzle piece that's part of a greater puzzle. Make dhikr open to meanings that are larger than one separate individual could possibly carry, so that together we can have the direct experience of meaning, either through imagery or beyond imagery, in direct knowledge of the real.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you for a beautiful teaching today.